But this year,
Good evening, Earth.
coming in for some
This is Adam Sturch broadcasting from the Mushroom Mansion, Taos, New Mexico,
working
working or starting on oil painting as of yet untitled.
And so I'll be coming back
I just mixed up a big mass of sap green linseed oil and some spirits as a background base color, and we'll go from there. Here we go.
Not just to me, but in general. What I can tell you is that trauma awareness is rising in the population, as you can see by this conference here. But the last bastion of absorbing that awareness is the medical profession. Now, why is that? I'll tell you why. But first of all, somebody once said, somebody once asked the question, how do you build a cult? Well, first of all, you separate people from their families, you sleep deprive them, you give them a special jargon that only they can understand, you put them under authoritarian leaders, and you make them feel unique. In other words, you send them to medical school, okay? Now, that's point number one. Point number two, medical school, for a lot of participants, is highly traumatizing. There's a very interesting study that was done. There's something called telomeres, or telomeres. Telomeres are structures of DNA at the end of our chromosomes. And they're like the aglets at the end of my shoelaces, glued to keep the chromosomes from unraveling. And we're born with a certain number of telomeres, certain number of units. And stress and aging shortens the telomeres. And the shorter the telomeres, the more you are prone to illness and to pathology in general, and or to death. By the end of our lives, our telomeres are quite short compared to the newborn. They looked at the telomere length of medical residents and how much they shortened within a year or two compared to other people their age. And the telomeres of the medical students fade more rapidly than those of other people their age. It's a highly stressed profession. It's a highly stressed profession. That's the second point. The third point is who goes into medicine. By the way, who goes into medicine, who goes into the healthy professions in general, speaking to all of you here. I tell you why I went into medicine. One, I really wanted to help people, as do all of you. Number two, more selfishly, I want to make a good living and have a secure existence. Those are all legitimate goals, and they're not to be dismissed. But there's a third goal that I had that I was aware of, which is to make myself important. Why did I want to make myself important? Because I didn't value myself. We shall talk about that. Now, when I mentioned that indigenous woman, the Haida woman, who loathed herself for having been so passive, as was mentioned in the introduction, one of the types of trauma is that you lose a sense of your own value. So the more I lack a sense of my own value, the more I want to validate my existence through what I do and who other people and how other people respond to me. Our doctors, for all the genuine reasons, humanitarian reasons, that impel them to go into that particular profession. And I should generalize this to people in the healthy professions overall. There's often also an element of needing to be important. And I'll talk more about that later. But the result is that then you start to identify with your role and how you see things. You're not going to accept, oh my God, so for 20 years I've been practicing medicine in a certain way, and somebody comes along with a new point of view, and I'm going to say, oh, go ahead, thank you, now I understand things better. No, you're going to defend your point of view, because your self-importance is dependent on what you identify with. So it's a very tough nut to crack. And I don't spend too much of my time worrying about how to do it. I just encourage you as well not to. I mean, if you have a good relationship with certain physicians, and you're in a position to have an open-minded conversation, by all means, please do it. But don't beat your head against the wall. Just do your work, demonstrate its value, speak your truth. As a very wise man once said, those that have ears will listen. And those that don't have ears, well, not much you can do about it. Okay? That's that mindset, yeah? Okay? Yeah?
Hi. I'm a bit nervous to admit that I'm a medical doctor after.
That's okay.
I really felt I needed to speak and say personally thank you for coming to Scotland. I'm a bit nervous.
So you said you're a medical doctor?
Yes, yes.
How many lectures did you receive on trauma?
I've never received a lecture on trauma.
Yeah.
And the reason I've learned about trauma is that I've had a very traumatic experience being a doctor.
Yeah.
And I think many, many doctors are traumatized by the experience of going to medical school, which is, for me, I recognise now, was a traumatic experience. Medicine attracts people who feel they have little value. And I was encouraged to go to medical school because I was seen as intelligent, and it was a way to please my parents.
Yeah.
And so, and you're right, it is a cult, and I was part of that cult for many years, and I eventually realised it was killing me, and I needed to speak up about things that I saw that I didn't agree with. And you're right about the pushback that causes. And what I was going to say was, how do we get the other doctors to listen? That was my question. Could I ask how many other doctors of medicine there are in the room? Because I'd love to meet you. Because there's probably aren't very many of us.
Yeah, would you like to stand up for a moment?
So I wanted you to know that there are doctors that are interested in your work. I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not in that field, but I have recently asked for trauma-informed care from my medical. So thank you for speaking.
So thank you, and thank you for identifying yourself and for asking your colleagues to identify themselves, because you need to support each other. It can be a lonely slog, you know, and so you need to support each other. So the more you can communicate, get to know each other, advocate together, the more powerful your work is going to be. So thank you for that.
Knock off the bullshit and get to the point.
This is the point, favorite. It's not bullshit. I'm not just talking about my wife, I'm talking about my life. I can't seem to get that through to you. I'm not just talking about one person, I'm talking about everybody. I'm talking about form, I'm talking about content, I'm talking about interrelationships, I'm talking about God, the devil, hell, heaven. Do you understand? Finally!
Hell belief, because they don't make an appeal through argument or metaphor. They compel belief because they're able to present themselves as imagery. You know, William Blake said, if the truth can be told so as to be understood, it will be believed. And so these things and it's very confusing because you wonder, you say, well, have people been doing this for thousands of years? And if so, have they always encountered this tremendous urgency on the other side? If people have been doing it for thousands of years, why is there this urgency on the part of these entities? And who exactly and what exactly are they? It appalls me, you can probably tell, that I have to talk about this because I am not, this is not my bailiwick. I mean, I'm a rationalist who's just had a very weird set of experiences, but I am a rationalist. I mean, I have no patience with channeling, you know, the lords of the many rays, the divas, and, you know, there's this whole thing going around about disincarnate intelligence, and it's mostly under the control of fairly, shall we say, non-rigorous thinkers. But I like to think that I am a rigorous thinker, and yet here I am telling you that, you know, elf legions await in hyperspace, one toke away. The difference between my rap and, you know, the Findhorn folks or somebody like that is that we have an operational method for testing my assertion. We can all smoke DMT, or you can make it your business to now find out about this and see for yourself. And not everybody agrees with me. I mean, some people say there wasn't anything like that. But some people agree, and I think if you get 2 out of 10 agreeing with a rap like this, then you better pay attention. Yeah, somebody...
It was me. You said that no amount of meditation or anything else prepares you for it. I mean, I've certainly a fair amount of DMT, and I've maybe not 50 times, but probably approaching that, and I'm still not prepared for it. Each time it seems like, I mean, all the times before haven't prepared me for what I get into. Is there a point where you found that you are prepared?
No, you're never prepared because, in fact, and I mentioned this last night, something goes on in the DMT flash that I don't think anyone can bring back. There is, at the core of the experience, something is revealed that is so appalling that nobody can bring it back into ordinary reality. And that's why it's hard to understand, because, as you know, I've done it a number of times, and every time I approach it, it scares me shitless. I cannot approach it any other way, and it's physical. I mean, my palms sweat, I can't hold the pipe, my hand shakes. I wish I hadn't gotten myself into this situation. I fear it like death itself. That's the clue, folks. I think that what happens, and I've reached this opinion by reason and rationalization, not by direct experience. I think that what happens at the center of the mandala of that experience is that you do understand that these are souls. You have some kind of experience which converts you to this view beyond a shadow of a doubt. I'm not saying you meet your dead grandmother, but it's something like that. And that experience is simultaneously so affirming and at the same time so paradigm shattering that you can't retain it. You return to this world with a story of Jules self-transforming basketballs and Fabergé eggs and a lesson in hyper language. But there is a moment, I think, where you find out something truly, truly paradigm shattering that you can't even tell yourself. It's such an appalling revelation. And the only thing I can think of that would fill that bill is something about the nature of life and death. That you actually go under the board, you find out the thing which nobody is ever supposed to find out in this world. And I suspect it's what shamans know. That a shaman is a person who knows the unspeakable secret. And once you know it, there's no going back. I mean, you become fey, enchanted. You're touched by the other. You now are a part of fairyland. And this gives you, I don't know what it gives you, charisma, magical power, healing, the possibility to heal. But it also sets you apart from your fellows because they don't know from it. They don't know. I mean, science can't survive in that environment for half a minute. The entire construct of Western reason disappears into that dimension like hurling an ice cube into a blast furnace. It just can't survive that encounter. If flying saucers were to land on the south lawn of the White House tomorrow, it wouldn't change the fact that DMT is the weirdest thing in the universe. Yeah.
What? I haven't done DMT yet. I'm fascinated now. So what's you're describing this experience in some way, which somehow I think you're communicating to us. But now after this has happened, there's 10 minutes of time as we know it passed, and you were saying that physically your mind is working, your emotions are working, the drug goes out of your system, you're snapped back into boring old reality. Then what happens? Do you know what I mean?
Well,
you spend the next week sort of trying to integrate what the hell this is about.
no.
You talk about the pocket again.
No, you don't do either in most cases. What you do is you immediately forget. Immediately. So if you talk to a person 5 minutes after they've smoked DMT, they're usually into saying, it was incredible, it was amazing. And then you talk to them a half hour later and they say, it was the most incredible thing that's ever happened to me, but I can't remember anything about it. And the fact that it's so brief, we tend to value things based on how long they last. Something which only lasts 2 minutes, once it's over, how can you say that that was the most important thing that ever happened to you? I mean, it is utterly irrelevant. It made no statement about your life, what you should do with your future, who you are, where you're going, or anything like that. It was just as though reality was rent, and you looked into an alien dimension. And then the rent was sealed, and everything goes back to being fine and dandy, thank you. It takes a lot of effort to stay focused on this dimension. I mean...
I'm sorry, so let's say you do that and the amnesia happens, and you just cannot integrate anything about that vision into your personality or your mind. It's like it happens, and it stops happening, and you can't absorb it. But then what must happen is at some time in the future, your curiosity is up, and you want to go try to get it again.
Well, what it did for me was it's evidence against certain points of view is what it is. It says, rationalism is just vaporized, and that never returns for you. Only if you can completely suppress the experience can you ever return to ordinary rationalism. I mean, you've just been in a place that was crawling with elves. Even if that never happens again, it did happen, and you from now on must take account of that in your modeling of the universe. You now know that elves really exist. This will make you much more interesting to your children. You've been reconverted to a belief in Santa Claus is what's happened, and now Santa's gone back up the chimney, but you're left saying, God, he was really here. Yeah, the milk's gone, the cookie's eaten. What the hell?
A couple of questions. Can you bring volition to it?
Do something in that place?
Can you decide in advance that since you've done this more than once, that you know, and you describe it as though it's the same each time, is it?
It's pretty much the same.
You know, the other side question to that is if three people were in a room doing it together, would they have, if you caught them in this period, or if you caught them immediately afterward, would their impressions of it be very similar?
I've sat in situations where you would turn one person on, then another person, maybe do 6 people in the course of an evening, and reactions vary. But also, there's a skill to doing it, and that's a part of the problem. It's very harsh. The smoke is very harsh, and you have to hold on to these big tokes so that if a person can't hang on to the toke, they're pretty much out of luck. I mean, it's a pity that it comes down to such a mechanical matter. This is why the best candidates for DMT, I think, are leather-lunged hash abusers. They have the lungs for it. Yeah.
You have described it as an absolute phenomenon, but what benefit is there?
Well,
Beneficial aspects of it.
to me it seems like the beneficial aspects arise by extrapolation. It teaches you, and this is what it taught me. I mean, I will never forget my first DMT trip because I was such a case going into it. I mean, if you had known me when I was 19 years old, I was into Jean-Paul Sartre, Alfred Camus, Marxism, Freud. I was a jerk. And I came down from it, and I said, I can't believe it. That was all I could say for about 20 minutes. I was like in shock. I said, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. Jesus, I can't believe it. And I said, you know, I've got to go back to square one. All these people I dismissed, all these people who say the universe is made of levels, who say there are disincarnate intelligences, who say that death is not simply the yawning grave. I had dismissed all those people as crybabies and sob sisters, and I said, no, the point of view that I previously dismissed is apparently what's actually happening. So in a single experience, I was converted from naive rationalism, realism, reductionism, to my present position, whatever it is. Really, all I've done is worked out the implications of the personal implications for me of the DMT flash, and I've also tried to create linguistic models of it. So the worth of it is that it shows you beyond a shadow of a doubt that the world is made of magic. That's what the world is made of, not natural law, not interlocking cause and effect, not any of these things that are normally. The world is magic, not a little bit, 100%. Every atom from one end of this cosmos to the other is magic, magic, magic. Certain concerns just die in the first 30 seconds of the DMT flash and can never be brought back, to my mind. I've seen people who I considered what I call fragile. Some people are not good candidates for the psychedelic experience because they've been damaged by life in some way. And so for them, boundaries shouldn't be dissolved because their whole challenge is to keep boundaries in place. And I remember one case particularly, a woman who was a friend of mine. I really liked her, but I thought of her as fragile and not somebody you wanted to lean on in a crisis. She smoked DMT, thrashed, moaned, rolled her eyes back, gave all the exterior symptoms of really having grabbed on, After about 10 minutes, she sat up and said, "It didn't work. Nothing happened." I said, "Nothing happened. Well, you want to try again?" "No way. Never, ever again." And so it did work. But the personality was somehow able to seal itself off from the implications, because the implications quite literally would have destroyed that person. It was a truth they weren't ready for. And I suppose it's wonderful that DMT saves you from that. I felt in danger of dying from astonishment when I did it, and I do every time I do it. I mean, I don't know how they keep the lid on this stuff.
All right. I'm going to do a second session. I'm going to pause for a moment and come back to this. Take 2 coming up.
Whom do you buy this stuff?
Well, they haven't made it easy for you. They've made it illegal. So that's really the question, is where do you get it? I can't solve all your problems for you, but that's what you need to know.
Is that what it is in the country?
Oh, it's legal in most countries. See, there isn't enough of it around. It's never been a social problem. They just made it illegal in the 1960s because they made everything illegal. I mean, if somebody is proposing to the DEA that a drug be made illegal, how do you decide if a drug should be made illegal if you're of their mindset? Well, the first thing you do is you look at emergency room admissions over the past 10 years. You say, well, how many people have been dragged into emergency rooms either raving or dying on this drug? The numbers for DMT, how many people in the past 15 years have been brought to emergency rooms? 0. Nobody. Because it doesn't last long enough. With our healthcare delivery system, it could last an hour and there would still be no... You'd have to take it in the emergency room, and then they'd have to run to keep the emergency alive long enough for anybody to look at it.
Is there any difference between whether you get 1 or 3 doses as far as dosage?
Yes, there's something, you have to learn how much you need, because some people are very sensitive and some people are incredibly insensitive. And that's why I took the time to describe this feeling of the air being pumped out of the room and then the appearance of this flower-like mandala. If the flower-like mandala persists for longer than 30 seconds or a minute, you're not going to break through. You need to sit up and ask for another toke. And I tell people, and when I turn people on to it, whenever I'm in some country where it's legal, I always say to them, at the 30-second mark, I will say, do you want another hit? If you don't say anything, you don't have to do anything. If you do, you must sit up on your own power. If you can't sit up, it's my judgment that you're too loaded to take another hit. So it's tricky to lead people into that.
How long has it been around?
Well, that's an interesting question, because as a plant hallucinogen, DMT has been around a long time. But in the Amazon, as a snuff, and it's what gives the visions to ayahuasca. You see, ayahuasca is a combinatory drug. It's 2 plants mixed together. One inhibits an enzyme system in the body called the monoamine oxidase system, whose job is to deactivate monoamines, of which all these drugs we're talking about are. And the other chemical in ayahuasca is DMT. So what these shaman in the Amazon are really doing is they are inhibiting the monoamine oxidase system, and that allows the DMT to be orally active. You see, if you were to just have some DMT and decide that rather than smoke it, you're going to take it orally, nothing will happen. it will be destroyed in your gut by this system called the MAO inhibitor, the monoamine oxidase system. But if you inhibit that system, you can make it become orally active. But when it's orally active, it's much more diminished and stretched out. But a very stiff dose of ayahuasca, you can, after about at the hour and 25-minute mark on a very strong dose of ayahuasca, if you're familiar with the territory, you can look around and say, my God, it's building toward being like a DMT flash. It is like a DMT flash, except that it goes on for a lot longer, 20, 30 minutes. I question whether in traditional societies anybody ever really reaches these reality obliterating levels. Among the Yanomamo, they make a snuff out of the seeds of Amidananthera peregrina. And I've done that snuff, and it's very painful to do because you have to blow a couple of tablespoons of ground toasted material up into your nostrils. You can't self-administer it. You have to have a friend blow the blower, and then you scream, fall back, salivate, and by the time you've gotten your act together, he's got it loaded again for the other nostril. And then if you do that, after about 10 minutes of sitting and shaking your head saying, geez, what have I done? A psychedelic state will creep over you, a trip, but not the DMT flash. So I think it's an interesting question. DMT was characterized and purified only in 1956 by a Czech chemist named Sara. And it may be then that only since 1956 have people been able to access that tremendous flash. I have at times given DMT to, well, in one case, a very well-known Tibetan spiritual teacher who shall remain nameless. But what he said after doing it was, he said, they're the lesser lights. What he meant was, when you enter the bardo, you see, on the first stage of the bardo, you see these so-called lesser lights. If you go beyond the lesser lights, you cut the thread that binds you to the physical body, and you then cannot return. You must head deeper into the death realm. So he said, they're the lesser lights. Seen it many times. Unusual that it should be caused by a plant, but there you have it. Yeah, Kathleen.
When we were foragers and DMT was in plants, did that affect our nervous system, or did it have to have the MAO inhibitors?
It has to have the MAO inhibitors to be orally active. Although it's a question, why did we invent smoking in the first place?
I was thinking of it not so much as a hallucinogen, but as a formative thing for the nervous system.
Well, definitely these things must have acted. You see, all these indoles, which we've been talking about, are drugs, but there are other indoles, which are growth hormones, sexual hormones, all kinds of stuff, and a lot of our physical expression has probably been altered by exposure to plants. I mean, our hairlessness. There are many aspects about us that are what is called neoteny. Do you all know what neoteny is? It's retention of infantile characteristics into adulthood. And if you look at the ratio, for instance, of our skull size to our body size and compare it to other monkeys, we're like juvenile monkeys. Even in the adult form, we appear juvenile in our proportions. Our hairlessness Other monkeys are born hairless, but then they quickly grow body hair. We don't. We retain the juvenile characteristics. And this is probably, when you encounter it in other animal life, it's always assumed to be a response to mutational pressure. So, and there may be progressive juvenilization going on in the human species. If sex gets any more dangerous, I think probably it will be eliminated as a method of reproduction, and we'll go to vats. And, this will further exacerbate this tendency toward neoteny. The way in which we permit and encourage a larval relationship to television, and the fact that television, the content of television is so idiotic. They say it's now down to being geared for the average 11-year-old. My 11-year-old is bored to death with TV. So this is a neotenization that is culturally sanctioned. We're accepting a kind of society where millions and millions of people have very simple thoughts and spend all their time in a larval state imbibing manufactured data streams that come to them over the boob tube. This is not a pretty picture, actually. I mean, these people are not entirely human beings. They would, I'm sure, rise in holy wrath if they heard that, but they never will hear it because it's not going to be broadcast on any channel they watch. Yeah.
That spiritual leaders thing that he said, was that DMT?
DMT.
And is it your understanding he saw the DMT elves?
I don't know if he saw the elves. He was of such a stature that I couldn't really hammer at him. He pronounced it the lesser lights, and I bowed my way out of the room. Oh, because these yogas that these Tibetans are into are all designed to familiarize themselves with the after-death state. In one way, in one possibility, like the notion of Tibetan religion is that what life is for is to get ready for dying. And that this getting ready for dying has to do with this metaphor of a vehicle, that you're supposed to build an after-death vehicle so that when you die and put the key in the ignition, it's not going to chug, chug, chug and then turn over and not go, because then you're in real trouble. You want your after-death vehicle to be well-serviced and fully fueled when you need it, because then you're going to drive off into the unknown.
Those guys experience anything as others experience on DMT?
Well, what is persistently claimed for shamanism, and certainly Tibetan religion has roots deep in Central Asian shamanism, what's claimed for shamanism is that the shaman can travel to the realms of the dead. That the shaman is a superhuman, in a superhuman condition, not entirely alive, not dead, but has physically transformed himself or herself into something, a creature of the entry zone. And this is the power of shaman, that they can come and go from the entry zone. And how seriously we should take this? Very seriously, because we have no technology for accessing these places. There's a lot of cultural hubris involved in all this. We can't imagine that any other culture is in possession of any information that we don't have a pre-prepared file on. And I think that when you spend time with these shamans and really get into it, you finally realize that Western civilization is completely infantile. It's completely hung up on the surface. It is not grounded in the dynamics of nature. We are childish. I have heard it said, I had an Indian friend, and he told me once he was going to return to live in India. I said, my God, you're going back to India. It's such a nightmare. Why? And he said, I know it's a nightmare. I hate everything about it except one thing. And I said, what's that? And he said, people in the West are so simple. I can't stand it. And this is true. I mean, if you don't think so, go buy hash in the markets of Bombay, and you will discover you are such a child. You don't know what's going on. You're so easily manipulated and led, so eager to be friendly. You take everyone at face value. Someone smiles at you, you think they're your friend. The line I love, which you hear occasionally in India and in other third world countries, is, I am your friend. I am not like all the others. Yes, special price. Welcome.
Are you able to formulate questions in this situation? I mean, it sounds like you deduced that they may be souls.
Yeah, I deduced that. No, you can't really ask questions because you can on psilocybin with other psychedelics, but you cannot do that with DMT because they know what they want to talk about. They only want to talk about this one thing, about this language transformation possibility. They want you to do.
That happens for others as well?
Yeah, a number of people have reported it. I, at the risk of repeating myself, there is a metaphor in the natural world which sheds some light on this, which is, you all know that octopi change color. This is well understood. Most people think it's because they can camouflage themselves, and so when they move across the reef, they go orange, red, blue, green, depending on what's behind them. This is not what is happening with octopi color changes. What is happening is that they communicate with each other by changing not only their colors, which they can have a very large repertoire of color changes, traveling dots, blushes, so forth. There are technical terms for all of these, but also because an octopus is a mollusk, it's a very soft-bodied creature. They can fold and unfold various parts of their bodies very rapidly, so they can modulate what you see. So that, for instance, if there's a red spot in the equivalent of their armpit, by raising and lowering an arm very rapidly, they can flash you this red spot. Well, at first pass, you just think, well, isn't that interesting? Octopi communicate by changing their shape and color. But if you go back and analyze it a little more closely, something very profound is happening here. You get to it by analyzing the nature of how we communicate. We communicate with small mouth noises. And we are physiologically set up to produce small mouth noises. The average human being can talk for a couple of hours without showing much sign of fatigue. Those of us who train hard can do it endlessly. And what's happening with small mouth noise communication is an acoustical wave is moving through space. It's been formed by the sender based on consulting of an internal dictionary. And then I see the word for, could you please help me? The words are, could you please help me? So they say, could you please help me? And then the acoustical wave goes across space, enters the ear of the intended object of the communication. They look in their dictionary and they say, oh, he's asking for assistance. Could you please help me means can I have assistance? But now what if the utterance is extremely complex? Then the object of this intended communication looks in their dictionary and they say, well, he either means that he would like to have an affair with me, or he means he would like the name of my tailor, or he means that his clothes cost more. And, there's ambiguity in all of this. And one thing we avoid doing very much in ordinary speech is saying to somebody, what do you exactly mean? Because we fake it. I mean, a lot of communication is, and you say, well, I don't know exactly. He said, I don't know, something. He wants something. What's happening with the cephalopods, the squids and the octopi, is there is no ambiguity. The surface of the octopus's body is the surface of the octopus's mind. The mind changes and controls the appearance of the body. There's no culturally sanctioned dictionary. One octopus can tell what another means by looking. And the meaning is biologically and genetically scripted, not culturally scripted. An octopus from thousands of miles away from where another octopus originated, if they are the same species, can understand instantly what is intended. So in a way, the octopus has involved a very complex linguistic system where the surface of the creature is its mind. Yeah.
Next week, Thursday.
Mm-mm.
You should read that book. The main character, Doc, in a laboratory, studies octopus, and he studies them in order to see if he can induce apoplexy.
Apoplexy and cephalopoidia. Sounds good. There are to show you how important this kind of communication is to octopi. The octopi evolved in the intertidal, or in the circulittoral zone, meaning in shallow waters off of continents, in reef environments. But, there's a lot of life in reef environments. It's as intense as a rainforest. So there's a lot of evolutionary pressure on a reef environment. And one strategy, if you're under a lot of evolutionary pressure, is to just go somewhere else, go where there isn't pressure. And where there isn't pressure, competition for food and stuff like that in the oceans is in the benthic, what's called the benthic depths, the abysses of the oceans. And many species of octopi have evolved into the abyssal environment, and they have retained their ability to communicate with each other in these zones of utter darkness by evolving phosphorescent organs that stud their bodies. So there are even octopi which have eyelid-like membranes over little lights that they can turn on and off at will, and then they can flutter these eyelid-like membranes. And if you can ever see film of this taken through the windows of bathyscaphs and other deep ocean exploration vessels, it's pure idea. The animal has disappeared. The animal has become its language. They never see anything of each other but their language. The body and the language have become the same thing. And I think that this is what we are being pointed toward. This is what those elves in hyperspace are trying to push us toward. Remember how I said they sing objects into existence? And the objects themselves then become kind of autonomous entities capable of singing other objects into existence. It's that in order to get the ambiguity out of language, we are going to
Alright, that was kind of fun. I still don't know what the hell I'm going to call it, but I was just kind of thinking about that.
It's incredible that this world of...
But it's kind of fun. I like the way the shapes are developing, sort of figures emerging out of the swirling brushstrokes, some of the brushstrokes retained, and some color beginning to creep in throughout the composition.
Noise and ambiguity. We barely can communicate with each other, and yet we have seized the tiller of planetary existence and propose to set the agenda for every life form on this planet, from virus to grizzly bear.
But that's it for the moment.
I think our problem with managing our situation is that we don't have a way of getting ambiguity out of our languages.
Thank you for watching. That's Adam Sturch broadcasting from the Mushroom Mansion Taos, New Mexico.
George Bush can tell
Starting oil painting, still as of yet unnamed. Maybe by the time I have the video processed and posted, I'll figure out something to call it. We'll see. Have a good night, Earth.